Part 1 of Lord Tedric by E. Doc Smith. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Mark Nelson. Lord Tedric, Part 1. Time is the strangest of all mysteries. Relatively unimportant events, almost unnoticed as they occur, may, in hundreds of years, result in ultimate catastrophe. On time track number 1, that was the immutable result. But on time track number 2, there was one little event that could be used to avert it: the presence of a naked woman in public. Scandos 1, the Scandos of time track number 1, numbered for reasons which will become clear, showed by means of the chronoviograph that civilization would destroy itself in 187 years. To prevent this catastrophe, he went back to the key point in time and sought out the key figure, one Tedric, a Lomarian ironmaster who had lived and died a commoner, unable ever to do anything about his fanatical detestation of human sacrifice. Scandos 1 taught Tedric how to make one batch of supersteel, watched him forge armor and arms from that highly anachronistic alloy. He watched him do things that Tedric of Time Track 1 had never done. Time, then, did fork. Time Track 1 was probably no longer in existence. He must have been saved by his traction on the reality of Time Track 2. He'd snap back up to his own time and see what the situation was. If he found his assistant Furman alone in the laboratory, the extremist would have been proved wrong. If not... Furman was not alone. Instead, Scandos 2 and Furman 2 were at work on a tri-D of Tedric's life, so like and yet so wildly unlike the one upon which Scandos 1 and Furman 1 had labored so long. Shaken and undecided, Scandos 1 held his machine at the very verge of invisibility and watched and listened. "But it's so maddeningly incomplete," Scandos 2 snorted. "When it goes into such fine detail on almost everything else, why can't we get how he stumbled onto one lot, and never any other, of high alloy steel? Chrome, nickel, vanadium, molybdenum, tungsten steel. Mortensen super steel, to be specific, which wasn't rediscovered for thousands of years. Why, it was revealed to him by his personal god Losir, don't you remember?" Furman snickered. "Poppycock. To us, yes, but not to them. Hence, no detail, and you know why we can't go back and check." "Of course, we simply don't know enough about time. But I would so like to study this Lord of the Marches at first hand. Nowhere else in all reachable time does any other one entity occupy such a uniquely key position." "So would I, Chief. If we knew just a little more, I'd say go. In the meantime, let's run that tri-D again, to see if we've overlooked any little thing." In the three-dimensional, full-color projection, Arms-Master Lord Tedric destroyed the principal images of the monstrous god Sarpedion and killed Sarpedion's priests. He rescued Lady Rowan, King Phagon's eldest daughter, from the sacrificial altar. The king made him Lord of the Marches, the highest of the high. "This part I like." Furman pressed a stud. The projector stopped. A blood-smeared armored giant and a blood-smeared naked woman stood, arms around each other, beside a blood-smeared altar of green stone. "Talk about being stacked! If I hadn't checked the data myself, I'd swear you went overboard there, Chief." "Exact likenesses, life-size," Scandos 2 grunted. "Tedric, 6'4", 230, muscle just like that. Rowan, 6 feet and half an inch, 190. The only time she ever appeared in the raw in public, I guess, but she didn't turn a hair." "What a couple!" Furman stared enviously. "We don't have people like that anymore." "Fortunately, no. He could split a full-armored man in two with a sword. She could strangle a tiger bare-handed. So what? All the brains of the whole damned tribe, boiled down into one, wouldn't equip a half-wit." "Oh, I wouldn't say that," Furman objected. "Fagon was a smooth, shrewd operator." "In a way, sometimes. But committing suicide by wearing gold armor instead of high-alloy steel doesn't show much brain power." "I'm not sure I'll buy that either. There were terrific pressures. But say Fagon had worn steel that day at Middlemarch Castle and lived 10 or 15 years longer. My guess is that Tedric would have changed the map of the world. He wasn't stupid, you know, just bull-headed, and Fagon could handle him. He would have pounded a lot of sense into his skull if he had lived." "However, he didn't live," Skandos returned dryly. "And so every decision Tedric ever made was wrong. But to get back to the point, did you see anything new?" "Not a thing." "Neither did I. So go and see how 812 is doing." For time test number 811 had failed, and there was little ground for hope that number 812 would be any more productive. And the lurking Skandos 1, who had been studying intensively every aspect of the situation, began to act. It was crystal clear that Time Track 2 could hold only one Skandos. One of them would have to vanish, completely, immediately, and permanently. Although in no sense a killer, by instinct or training, only one course of action was possible if his own life, and as a matter of fact all civilization, were to be conserved. Wherefore he synchronized and shot his unsuspecting double neatly through the head. The living Skandos changed places with the dead. A timer buzzed briefly. The time machine disappeared, completely out of synchronization with any continuum that a world's keenest brain and an ultra-fast calculator could compute. This would, of course, make another fork in time, but that fact did not bother Skandos 1 at all, now. As for Tedric, since the big, dumb lug couldn't be made to believe that he, Skandos 1, was other than a god, he'd be a god, in spades. He'd build an image of flesh-like plastic, exactly like the copper statue Tedric had made, and go back and announce himself publicly as the god Losir. He'd come back, along Time Track 3, of course, and do away with Skandos 3. There might have to be another interference, too, to get Tedric started along the right time track. He could tell better after seeing what Time Track 3 looked like. If so, it would necessitate the displacement of Skandos 4. So what? He had never had any qualms, and now that he had done it once, he had no doubt whatever as to his ability to do it twice more. Of the three standing beside Sarpedion's grisly altar, King Fagon was the first to become conscious of the fact that something should be done about his daughter's nudity. "Flasnir, your cloak!" he ordered sharply, and the Lady Roanne, unclamping her arms from around Tedric's armored neck and disengaging his steel-clad arm from around her waist, covered herself with the proffered garment. Partially covered, that is, for since the cloak had come only to mid-thigh on the courtier, and since she was a good 7 inches taller than he, the coverage might have seemed, to a prudish eye, something less than adequate. "Chamberlain Shillen, Captain Skiro," the captain went on briskly, "haul me this carrion to the river and dump it in. Put men to cleaning this place. 'Tis not seemly so." The designated officers began to bawl orders, and Tedric turned to the girl, who was still just about as close to him as she could get, awe, wonder, and relieved shock still plain on her expressive face. "One thing, Lady Roanne, I understand not. You seem to know me, act as though I were an old tried friend. 'Tis vast honor, but how? You, of course, I know, have known and honored since you were a child, but me, a commoner, you know not. Nor, if you did, couldst know who it was neath all this iron." "Art wrong, Lord Tedric. Nay, not Lord Tedric. Henceforth you and I are Tedric and Roanne merely. I have known you long and well, would recognize you anywhere. The few of the old true blood stand out head and shoulders above the throng, and you stand out even among them. Who else could it have been? Who else hath the strength of arm and soul, the inner and the outer courage? No coward I, Tedric, nor ever called so, but on that altar my very bones turn jelly. I could not have swung weapon against Sarpedion. I tremble yet at the bare thought of what you did. I know not how you could have done it. You feared the god, Lady Roanne, as do many. I hated him. 'Tis not enough of explanation, and Roanne merely, Tedric, remember. Roanne. Thanks, my lady. 'Tis an honour more real than your father's patent of nobility, but 'tis not fitting. I feel as much a commoner. Commoner? Bah! I ignored that word once, Tedric, but not twice. You are, and deservedly, the highest of the high. My father the king has known for long what you are. He should have ennobled you long since. Thank Sarp, thank all the gods he had the wit to put off no longer. 'Tis blood that tells, not empty titles. The throne can make and unmake nobility at will, but no power whatever can make true bloods out of mongrels, nor create real manhood where none exists. Tedric did not know what to say in answer to that passionate outburst, so he changed the subject, effectively, if not deftly. In speaking of the marches to your father the king, you mentioned the sages. What said they? At another time, perhaps. Lady Roanne was fast recovering her wonted cool poise. 'Tis far too long to go into while I stand here half naked, filthy, and stinking. Let us on with the business in hand, which for me is a hot bath and clean clothing. Roanne strolled away as unconcernedly as though she were wearing full court regalia, and Tedric turned to the king. Thinks the Lady Trice is nearby, sire? If I know the jade at all, she is, Phagon snorted. And not only near, she's seen everything and heard everything, knows more about everything than either of us, or both of us together. Why? Thinks she'd make a good priestess? The best. Much more so, methinks, than the Lady Roanne. Younger. More priestess-like, say? Perhaps. Phagon was very evidently skeptical, but looked around the temple anyway. Trice! He yelled. Yes, father? A soft voice answered, right behind them. The king's second daughter was very like his first in size and shape, but her eyes were a cerulean blue, and her hair, as long and as thick as Roanne's own, had the colour of ripe wheat. Aye, daughter, wouldst thou like to be priestess of Losir? Oh, yes, she squealed, but sobered quickly. On second thought, perhaps not. No. If so be it sacrifice is done, I intend to marry some day, and have 6 or 8 children. But perhaps, could I take it now, and resign later, think you? 'Twould not be necessary, sire and Lady Trice, Tedric put in, while Phagon was still thinking the matter over. Losir is not at all like Sarpedion. Losir wants abundance and fertility and happiness, not poverty and sterility and misery. Losir's priestess marries as she pleases, and has as many children as she wants. Your priestess I, then, sirs. I go to have cloth of gold robes made at once. The last words came floating back over her shoulder as Trice raced away. Lord Tedric, sir. Unobserved, Skyro had been waiting for a chance to speak to his superior officer. Yes, Captain? 'Tis the men. The cleaning. We, I mean. Skyro of old Lomar would not pass the buck. The bodies. The priests, you know, and so on. Were easy enough, and we did manage to handle most of the pieces of the god. But the heart and so on, you know, we know not where you want them taken. And besides, we fear. Wilt stand by and ward, Lord Tedric, while I pick them up? "'Tis my business, Captain Skyro, mine alone. I crave pardon for not attending to it sooner. Hast a bag?" "Yea." The highly relieved officer held out a duffel bag of fine, soft leather. Tedric took it, strode across to the place where Sarpedion's image had stood, and, not without a few qualms of his own, now that the frenzy of battle had evaporated, picked up Sarpedion's heart, liver, and brain, and deposited them neither too carefully nor too carelessly in the sack. Then, swinging the burden up over his shoulder, "I go to fetch the others," he explained to his king. "Then we hold sacrifice to end all human sacrifice." "Hold, Tedric," Phagon ordered. "One thing, or two or three, methinks. 'Tis not seemly to conduct a thing so, lacking order and organization and plan. Where dost propose to hold such an affair? Not in your ironworks, surely?" "Certainly not, sire." Tedric halted, almost in mid-stride. He hadn't got around yet to thinking about the operation as a whole, but he began to do so then. "And certainly not on this temple or Sarpedion's own. Lord Losir is clean. All our temples are fouled in every stone and timber." He paused. Then suddenly, "I have it, sire! The amphitheatre!" "The amphitheatre? 'Tis well. 'Tis of little enough use, and a shrine will not interfere with what little use it has." "Wilt give orders to build?" "The Lord of the Marches issues his own orders." "Hola, Shillen, to me!" the monarch shouted, and the chamberlain of the realm came on the run. "Lord Tedric speaks with my voice." "I hear, sire. Lord Tedric, I listen." "Have built, at speed, midway along the front of the amphitheatre, on the very edge of the cliff, a table of clean, new-quarried stone, 10 feet square and 3 feet high. On it mount Lord Losir so firmly that he will stand upright forever against whatever may come of wind or storm." The chamberlain hurried away. So did Tedric, with his bag of spoils. First to his shop, where his armor was removed and where he scratched himself vigorously and delightfully as it came off. Thence to the temple of Sarpedion, where he collected the other, somewhat lesser hallowed trio of the Great One's vital organs. Then, and belatedly, to home and to bed. A little later, while the new-made Lord of the Marches was sleeping soundly, the king's messengers rode furiously abroad, spreading the word that 10 days hence, at the 4th period afternoon, in Lampor's amphitheatre, great Sarpedion would be sacrificed to Losir, Lomar's new and ultra-powerful god. End of Part 1.